Hey guys, welcome back to Chapter in Ash. I am Ash, you are here, and I am absolutely pumped because today we're taking a break from the dark and the disturbing, the horrific, the demented novels that we've been covering a lot here on the channel recently, especially coming off the novels that inspired killers. And today we're going to talk about 12 seriously life-changing biographies. These can motivate you or touch you. Either way, they are books that I highly recommend you take the time to read. Now, I've read so many biographies and autobiographies. It's actually the biggest or second biggest kind of genre in my personal catalog. I can't get enough of learning about interesting people, even if I don't agree with every single thing that they did in their lives. I love learning about interesting folks out there. So I have a good assortment, an athlete or two, an entrepreneur or two, historical figure, and so on. Let's go ahead and jump right into it though, because we have 12 books to cover. I just couldn't narrow it down to 10 on this one. And I'm going to have a follow-up too. I'm going to have a part 2 on this one because there's so many good biographies out there. But I want to start with one of the most profound and impactful on the list. This is certainly a must-read for everybody out there, and it's The Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank. This is one of the most powerful books ever written. I read it back in high school or whatever. I skimmed it in high school, read the cliff notes, whatever. But I reread it recently, and boy, did it touch me. Anne Frank, is witty. She's charming. She's brilliant. And she's just a young girl, right? For those who don't know, Anne Frank basically documented 2 years in hiding during the Holocaust. She did it with humor, with surprising humor, with, like I said, wit, with fear, and also with hope. You know, she basically processed her coming of age, her adolescence under life-threatening pressure, and yet she still dreamed of becoming a writer. She still had dreams and hope, and man, I'm getting a little emotional, honestly, just talking about it. Her voice is really, truly one of the most powerful testimonials of human resistance ever written. Her spirit certainly survives, even though her body obviously didn't. She sadly passed away in a concentration camp at the age of 15. Honestly, her words are reflections of my grief, my loss at the loss of my mother and my brother in my life, and other family members as well. She proves that even the smallest and little human voices, right, can echo across generations, and she can impact me here, 80 years later. It's really, truly, it's profound, it's sad, but it's such an impactful read. You must read it. So the reason that the Diary of a Young Girl even saw the light of day is she rewrote her diaries shortly before being captured. And her father, being the last surviving family member, returned it once he was released from the concentration camp. So yeah, read A Diary of a Young Girl. That comes in as number 1 on our list today. Next up on the list is Steve Jobs by Walter Isaacson. So Walter Isaacson, man, I could have put probably 3 or 4 of his biographies in this video. He's one of the most prolific and best biographers alive today. Steve Jobs, what can I say that hasn't been said about freaking Steve Jobs, right? He blended technology and art and intuition, really, in a way that nobody else could out there. He was super intense, uncompromising.
We could influence the world.
He was truly a visionary, right? But he was also deeply flawed. I love flaws in my biographies, right? Like, I don't like a perfect person because nobody is a perfect person. So when I read a biography, or an autobiography for that matter, that's talking about perfection, it turns me off because I know it doesn't exist.
His stuff was beloved, but it wasn't that he was beloved.
So he was a paradox, but he also reshaped culture, in a way, through his force, his sheer will, and his determination.
Thank you for coming. We're going to make some history together today. He
lived with a sense of urgency, and Isaacson does a great job of illustrating his entire life and how he became the way he was. This is a really good read, obviously, Steve Jobs, but especially the Isaacson version of Steve Jobs. Even if you've seen documentaries or whatever on him, give this book a read. It will, if nothing else, it will motivate you to do something, to achieve something. Obviously not on the scale of Jobs necessarily, but I found this book very motivating. Now, interesting fact about Steve Jobs, though, is he delayed cancer treatment for months and months to pursue diets, and he later strongly regretted that decision before his death. He also co-founded Pixar, really transforming animation as much as computing as well. So Steve Jobs, certainly a very, very fascinating life and visionary. That's the next entry on the list. Next up on the list is going to be Truman by David McCullough. Oh my word, I did not expect to love this one as much as I did. Golly, so good. I never thought that Harry Truman was such an interesting person until I read the biography by McCullough. So Harry Truman, former U.S. president, rose from like a failed farmer in a small town. He was a nobody, right? And he was the president who ended World War II. He rebuilt Europe. He integrated our military. He made decisions that reshaped everything we know about geopolitics today. He had no elite education at all. He had no political advantages, just integrity, a lot of integrity, something that, I think that no matter your political lean, we could probably use a lot more of everywhere in the world today, right? He had discipline, immense discipline, and a stoicism about him, and a willingness to always choose the hard path. Man, there's a lot to really admire about Harry Truman. And he had flaws too, just like we said, like everybody else on this list. Honestly, I respect people who weren't born from powerful positions and became powerful or, successful in their own way, changed the world through their own character, their grit, their determination, I understand that, listen, if you're born with wealth, you can't really choose, but I just have that in me, not to compare myself certainly with Harry Truman, but I came, from humble beginnings, let's just say. I moved 25 times before I graduated high school. It was a wild ride for me, but I really had that respect for others who kind of came from nothing. I think we all do to a certain extent. He even paid for all White House expenses himself as not a rich man at all. Harry Truman, fascinating read by David McCullough. That's the next entry on our list. Next on our list is Ernest Hemingway by Mary Dearborn. My word, Ernest Hemingway has to be one of the most interesting people who ever lived. Also one of the most flawed people who ever lived. He lived his life like it was a series, not just one novel, but a series of novels. So interesting. He was a war correspondent. He was a deep sea fisherman. He was a big game hunter. He was a lover. He was a fighter. He was a traveler. He was a literary icon. Excuse me, if I can speak, it'd be great here on my BookTube channel, right? Honestly, beneath the myth though, the mythos of Ernest Hemingway was a wounded, insecure, self-destructive man, just searching for his identity in the world. The extremes is what really drew me to the life of Ernest Hemingway. I think the biography of Ernest Hemingway, personally, is far more interesting than anything that Ernest Hemingway actually wrote. No knock on anything that he wrote. I just think that's how interesting it is, right? I mean, my man survived 2 different plane crashes in 48 hours. That's a true story. That's insane. I'm drawn to people in life who burn hot and they pay for it afterwards. Hemingway represents masculine myth-making identity, right? Creativity too, though, and the cost of really, identity or lack thereof. Also, intensity or lack thereof, not in his case, but it's a really, really good read. Ernest Hemingway by Mary Dearborn. Next on the list is Michael Jordan, The Life by Ronald Lansby. Big basketball fan here. So I've read a ton of biographies about NBA legends, current and former, and Michael Jordan, The Life really, really stood out to me as my favorite entry for sports on the list. Michael Jordan, obviously, he's the greatest basketball player of all time. He was also a psychological force to be reckoned with for anybody.
What Jordan has done, the blueprint that he has laid is incredible.
Either on the court or off the court, that ever had to go against him in anything, a game, but in the grand sense, the game of life, right? He was obsessed. He's driven. He's spite-fueled in a big, big, big way. He's competitive to a mythic degree, okay? He pushed the human limit and the human potential as well. His life is about the cost of greatness, though, as much as greatness itself, from his family tragedies and all of the things that he's gone through.
18-year-olds accused of murdering the father of basketball star Michael Jordan appeared in court.
I think that I looked at the death of my father. Unfortunately, it happened at the hands of another human being.
During his career and then afterwards, it hasn't been an easy life necessarily for Michael Jordan. I mean, the famous story, right, is that he was cut from his varsity as a sophomore, and he never forgot that humiliation. But he used it to drive himself, right? So I connect with people who are relentless, those who want to test their limits and leave something behind. And Jordan's obsession mirrors the ambition and hunger.
Low on energy I felt an obligation, to my team, to the city of Chicago, to go out and give that extra effort.
I look for, that I want to envelop in some ways. I don't want to go that extreme with the competitive side of things, but I always look for something that I admire in people that I'm reading biographies about, and Jordan has a ton of it. It really comes down to his intensity and his drive at the end of the day. Next entry on the list is When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kalanithi. We talked about this in the Books That Made Me Cry video, but I had to include it here as well because this is an absolute tearjerker. But this is a book that you want to read if you're feeling lost in life, guys. If you're feeling like your life is bad, you're losing touch with what matters to you, you just don't know who you are. Maybe you're just searching for yourself and your spot in the world as we go through kind of the seasons of life, right? Not to be so woo-woo about the whole thing, but I've been there so many times, and this book has a grounding effect. Paul Kalanithi was a brilliant neurosurgeon and a new father as well when he was diagnosed with terminal cancer at the age of 36. He wrote about mortality in both a philosophical way with depth, but also heartbreaking vulnerability at the same time. He spent the final months of his life trying to understand what makes life meaningful, especially as his time disappears, all knowing that he had a daughter on the way. Heartbreaking, even saying it out loud. It's heartbreaking, but it's written in a way not to break you, but to force you to focus on what really matters in your life and be grateful for what you have right here in the now. It has core themes that I return to personally: fatherhood, death, purpose. This is what I not struggle. This is what means the world to me, right? Finding beauty in the face of loss has been an endeavor that I've been, embarked on for the last decade or more. It mirrors my own emotional evolution, I will say, in recent years in my life. He actually wrote most of this book when he was going through chemo, and his wife had to conclude the book after, in basically a devastating emotional epilogue after his death. That is When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kalanithi. Up next on the list is Churchill by Andrew Roberts. Winston Churchill, what an enigma of a man. Fascinating individual. He was stubborn, he was brilliant, and he was a tireless force who refused to let Britain fall during the darkest days of World War II when London was being bombed on a daily basis. He's got the victory V, right? He was a genius politician, we all know that, but he was also incredibly eccentric, making for just an overall fascinating, like I said, individual. Deep depression in his life, but also a ton of humor. Overwhelming energy is the biggest takeaway I have from Winston Churchill. He was always doing something, and he wasn't afraid to do anything. His speeches, his writing, and his strategy, the way that he approached the world in a strategic sense, made him really the single most important person in World War II, in my opinion. Personally, his resilience and his leadership really stuck out for me, right?
And your untiring response brought us, in the end, victory over Germany. So
what really spoke to me, outside of everything I just mentioned about Winston Churchill, guys, is that, man, his resilience and his leadership abilities were really second to none. I took away a lot of his lessons that I applied to my work, my company and my work here on YouTube. I look at anything that I need to run a team and be in a leadership position. I really learned a lot from Winston Churchill through this book by Andrew Roberts. I mean, a lot of people don't know this, but Winston Churchill wrote more words in his life than Shakespeare and Dickens combined. I mean, that's crazy. He won the Nobel Prize in literature as well. Either way, Churchill, a fascinating character, and I highly recommend the biography on him by Andrew Roberts. Next up on our list is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. We talked about this one in Books That Made Me Cry as well. And golly, this is like probably the must-read out of all must-reads today on the list, guys. Frankl survived multiple concentration camps in his life. He lost his parents. He lost his wife, he lost an unborn child, yet he emerged with a philosophy centered on purpose and responsibility and the ability to choose how you behave and how you react to any given stimuli in your life, right? He believed that suffering itself could be meaningful if it was directed towards a higher aim. His aim was to live on and teach these lessons to all of us, this is why we have this book, right? It's kind of like a combination, this writing, between spirituality, psychology, and really the lived trauma that he experienced in his story, which is harrowing, obviously. His worldview aligns with my own in terms of my search for meaning, especially in the context of loss. As you can see, this is something that runs through my blood, and I'm always searching for a way to reconcile my loss in life as well through my readings and my fears in life as well, right? His approach to suffering, though, for me, is a reflection on legacy and building something that can outlast you, and that's what I try to do. Heck, that's what I'm trying to do on my little modest YouTube channel here. He rejected a visa, by the way, Frankl, to stay with his elderly parents before the war. Otherwise, he could have escaped, but he stayed with his parents. He wrote this entire book in just 9 days, and it will change your life. That's A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Next up on the list is Henry V by Dan Jones, the most recently written entry on the list. I loved this book. It's one of my top 10 of all time. I don't know, man. I don't know what it is, the time period, but it really just hit me so hard. It was such an enjoyable read. It reads like fiction, partially maybe because of the era that it was in, but I don't know. Either way, Henry V, the protagonist, obviously the real-life protagonist, rose from a reckless young youth to England's most iconic warrior king of all time, right? Leading armies from the front and uniting fractured kingdoms, basically all on his own at times. He was shaped by battlefield wounds. My man was shot in the face with an arrow at age 16, and he survived, right? He had to deal with political upheaval after political upheaval, right? He had this divine sense, though, of destiny, and it gave him such strength, such determination, such confidence and courage when everything seemed to be stacked up against him, not once, twice, but so many times during his life and his reign. I'm drawn to leaders forged in fire. Henry's transformation, for me, it was an evolution that I can't say that I've gone through anything like that, but when building businesses, when dealing with difficult situations in life, personal situations, right, relationships, there's something about Henry that is just such an immense source of strength for me. It's crazy about somebody who lived hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago. But Henry V by Dan Jones might be the most enjoyable read out of any book on this list today. This next one's a very personal one, is Jim Henson by Brian J. Jones. So my brother, he passed away when he was 28 years old, and Sean was his name, and he was autistic. The best way to describe Sean was like a 28-year-old body, right? He was a big guy, bigger than me, like in stature. But he was probably a, 4-year-old in terms of his intellectual development. And he loved everything Sesame Street and Muppets. So my whole life as a big brother, 40 years older than him, was not just, through a few years, but my entire 28 years with Sean was Sesame Street and the Muppets, aka Jim Henson. Honestly, he was the biggest inspiration for me to start, not this YouTube channel, my first YouTube channel, Clash with Ash, 11 years ago plus now. He gave me the confidence to be creative, to be authentic, to be who I am in front of the camera here on YouTube. And he's been an inspiration for me my entire life. He reshaped my childhood worldwide. I'm sure a lot of individuals' childhood. He created, again, The Muppets, Sesame Street, Labyrinth as well. An entire universe, Dark Crystal, right? Entire universe built on imagination and heart. Also some humor, some wit for adults out there as well, right?
Do you get a lot of chicks now? That, most rock stars have the groupies now that you're a big star. Does that
being a puppet, it's sort of different.
He was behind the gentle puppets, right? He was a relentless innovator as well, and he saw creativity as very serious work. Not that he didn't have fun, but he was serious about it. He took his work very seriously, and I'm kind of the same way, He left at a pace that was borderline superhuman. He has a lot of echoes of Steve Jobs to me because he did make big sacrifices with his family, even though I'm a big fan of Brian Henson and the entire family, what they've done, Children's Television Workshop as well. But anyway, he never lost his sense of wonder and kindness. He was always curious about the world around him. And if I take anything beyond the creativity and anything about Jim Henson, it's his curiosity and wonder. That, to me, are the most important attributes I want to pass on to my son as he goes older. I don't want him to lose that because I didn't, and for me, it defines me. He was the perfect blend of imagination and ambition, proof that you can build an empire without losing your soul as well. Man, I think that it's a really good read for anybody with creative spirit who wants maybe a more creative, if that's a fair word, take on ambition in building something and changing the world as opposed to maybe the tech side of a Steve Jobs. That's Jim Henson by Brian J. Jones. Next up is going to be Grant by Ron Chernow. Oh my word! If you thought I loved Truman, how about Ulysses S. Grant biography? This is one of my most unexpected and beloved biographies of all time. This was so unbelievably good. I did not expect it to be this good. I did not expect to admire Ulysses S. Grant as much as I did. He overcame brutal business failings again and again and again while he was coming up. He had major depression. He had public embarrassment for days before finally emerging, kind of haphazardly, as you can tell, as a steady general who ended up defeating the Confederacy. He was calm, stoic, patient. He always had this moral clarity throughout his entire life at almost a spiritual level of resilience in his life. The resilience, I wish I had that. Golly, I wish I did. Later as president, again, such an unlikely president, let alone general, right? He fought for civil rights. He tried to unify a broken nation. This book takes you into post-Civil War, and I think sometimes, at least back in my day in school here in the States, it's almost like Civil War ended and they freed the slaves, yada, yada, yada. But it certainly was not like that, It was still a nation divided, and he had to try to reconcile that division and try to, amend all the wrongs that had taken place throughout the entire nation. What a biography! So good. This is one. Grant wrote his memoirs while he was dying of cancer, and it was actually Mark Twain that personally published them just to ensure that his family had some sort of financial resources because he was poor, despite all of his accomplishments. Grant by Ron Chernow. Man, check it out. And last but certainly not least on the list today is going to be Total Recall by Arnold Schwarzenegger. Oh man, this is such a good read, guys, such a good read. Schwarzenegger is a flawed individual, as are everybody that we talked about. Maybe with the exception of Anne Frank, to be fair here on the list, but hey, we all have our flaws. Either way, Arnold, man, love him or hate him, he is such a motivating figure. I think that he has, I think he has a good heart. I really do. He rose from an Austrian farm with nothing. This is, again, you can tell that I really relate to stories of starting with nothing and taking over the world, right? And becoming so accomplished. He became one of the greatest bodybuilder alive, right? Then an absolute Hollywood icon. And then the governor of California. With nothing, starting with nothing, no money, nothing. He just came to the United States and he decided to learn about real estate. And then he started to make a little bit of money. He started to, train more. He broke into gyms when he was young because he couldn't afford a gym membership in Austria. I mean, it's really incredible. He took acting classes, took accent classes. It was just the work that he put in is mythic. His discipline, his self-belief. It is so unbelievably motivating to read this book. His life is a masterclass in vision setting, the ability to imagine a future and then go and make it a reality, right? His journey very, very softly echoes my own in terms of my desire to reinvent myself and to rebuild even across different seasons of life and different kind of avenues, from work to media to marketing and everything in between. And then again, my own personal life as well. His discipline and refusal to settle speaks directly to the drive as an entrepreneur that I want to have in my life as well. Arnold Schwarzenegger, man, this guy accomplished a lot with nothing, and at the very least, it's really interesting to hear about his journey. So there it is, guys. Those are 12 of my absolute favorite biographies, autobiographies out there, but I have so many more. So as I said at the top of this video, be expecting a part 2. I hope, let me know if you want to read or if you're going to read any of these after I recommend it. Same goes with all my videos, because I would love to hear what you guys think of some of these books as well. Thanks so much for watching. Much love, and as always, take care, guys.